Welcome to the Develop Yourself podcast, featuring my dad, the best coder ever.
So I was out with my buddies last night, and we were hanging out, eating. They were drinking and stuff like that. Not me, though. I don't drink. So they were all talking about tech and the job market. None of these people are in tech, by the way. They're far outside of tech. And they're asking me, man, how's your job, man? Are you nervous at all? I'm like, oh, no, things are going pretty good. Can't complain. Like my job. It's pretty fun. Get to write code all day long and learning a whole lot of new technology. They're like, are you worried about, you getting replaced by AI? Because it seems like there's only a few more years left for, people like you to even have a job. And I'm like, wait, what? I'm like, well, no, that's completely false. And they say, well, I've seen these videos where they can train AI to write code and stuff like that. I'm like, oh yeah, I use AI every single day. Doesn't that scare you that you can basically just offload your job to a computer? I'm like, well, what do you guys do, right? And I know what they do. They do more typical office jobs or working in education. And I'm like, would you worry that if it could do something as complex as writing code, that it could easily do what you do as well? Especially thinking about curriculum that's offered by the state. And could an AI tool just take that and disseminate that information in the most relevant way possible to a student? You write emails and stuff for a lot of your job. Couldn't AI just respond? Think about the possibilities, right? If the software engineering occupation is fully automatable, that you could have an AI tool just do the whole thing. And that's a really complex job that people get paid a lot of money for. So companies have a vested interest in replacing as many software engineers as possible, right? Because we're paid a ton of money. We're usually the highest paid within an organization as far as individual contributors. So of course they want to get rid of software engineers. That's just business 101, right? Why would you not want to lower your costs dramatically? Now, have they been able to do that? No. There's still tons of software engineers out there. Obviously not, right? It's so obvious that that is not the reality. But yet and still people seem to think that this dystopian future, which for whatever reason only affects software developers. So odd, right? Aren't they worried about the lawyers, doctors, content creators, people that write for a living, people that do pretty menial tasks or have these kind of jobs that really don't require a lot of complex effort or complex thought? Aren't they more worried about those jobs getting automated, not the people that are writing code for a living? So that's always a really funny thing to me. And then I also think there's so much misinformation out there that is actively discouraging people that should get into the industry because they actually like to write code. They might be really good at it. They could be making the next best thing out there that helps humanity or just gives them a better life, right? But they're getting actively discouraged from doing this. And I'm thinking, well, what are you going to do? Where is the place that you're going to hide from this AI revolution or whatever? Where are you going to hide? What are you going to do that you're saying, well, now I'm safe? Is it woodworking, carpentry, HVAC, something that involves physical labor or some sort of complex physical task that you need to do? These are all fine occupations, by the way. I have a cousin that was a welder, and I think that's a great occupation. He really enjoyed doing it, and you can get paid a lot of money. Do I think that you should do that to be safe? I think that's a silly idea and a terrible way to live. I think if you have a passion for something and you're decent at it and you want to pursue it, you should. Also, let's just be clear. Coding as a profession is not in danger. And the moment that it is in serious danger, you will know it because companies will begin replacing as many of us as they possibly can. Now, I want you to do this little exercise with me, right? I want you to go to trueup.io/job-trends. It'll show you the number of open tech jobs at startups, tech unicorns, and public tech companies. If you see an interesting curve in this chart, we're up to around 220,000 open jobs right now. And these are only at startups and tech type companies. This doesn't include all the other companies that hire software engineers. This is up from a low of 160,000 around 2023. So at the beginning of 2023, we're at a really low point. At the end of 2024, going into 2025, we are climbing up incrementally, not dramatically, but quite a lot more than we were. We're up 40% nearly from the low. Now, the peak was around 2022, right around 2022, when we had 500,000 jobs or something open. So we're still way lower than we were from the peak. But remember, this peak was fairly artificial. This peak was massive. It was basically brought on by COVID. So That's not going to happen again, right? We're never going to have another situation, I hope, let's all pray we don't, where tons of Americans and the whole world is working from home and buying junk online all day, and the internet basically explodes to a scale that it never has seen before. Why do you think we had all those hires in 2022? And then now we're correcting, and now we're going back on this upswing. So I feel bad for the people that have basically decided, I'm not going to do tech. It's too dangerous. I'm going to do something else, which is actually way more likely to be automated. Makes zero freaking sense to me. So why does this myth prevail? Why do we still keep seeing the layoff stuff and the person that applied to 1 million jobs and can't get an interview? I have some thoughts in this. And one is that layoffs that happen at large, big companies are interesting. You know what's not interesting? Hearing about the dude that went to a program like Parsity or learned to code on their own and then goes to a no-name company and has an interesting, nice life and more free time on their hands and makes a nice salary. That's not interesting. That's boring. That's boring news, right? You know what's really interesting news? Google lays off another 1,000 employees. Meta slices, 500,000 employees. TikToks where some dude at Meta is drinking, a latte in the middle of the day and saying, I only work 2 hours a day and the rest of the day I just drink kombucha and wash my clothes on site and play video games and foosball. That's interesting. It makes people pissed off. They're like, what? You're making that much money for doing nothing all day at Meta? What a joke. You deserve to be fired. So, of course, those types of stories take up the news cycle, right? They're just interesting to read. There's way more interesting than like me or something like that. Like, oh, dude got laid off and got hired a month later at some no-name tech company that he really enjoys. These are boring stories, right? You want to be one of those boring stories, in my opinion. Remember this, the top 5, 10 companies that hire software developers, they are not Google, Meta, Facebook, Amazon, Netflix, right? These are massive companies that hire, around 1% of software developers out there worldwide. So where do most software developers work? They work for companies that you've never, ever heard of. In fact, Stack Overflow did a survey, which I often reference because it's a source of truth, and it gives you an actual glimpse into what's going on, not this weird false reality, false narrative painted by the news and social media. I mean, I don't think they're giving out a false narrative as much as they're just picking stories that tend to get traction. They're in the business of getting eyeballs on the page, and what sells are things like layoffs and AI taking jobs and things like that, captivate interest among people outside of tech. Hey, I hope you're enjoying this episode, and if you're interested in becoming a software developer, learning how to build complex software, and actually get hired, join me at Parsity.io. If you're serious about joining, just schedule a call with me by clicking the link in the show notes. If you're in tech, there's significantly less worry about this than outside of tech. It's so funny, when I talk to people in tech, we don't get freaked out by the layoffs or AI. Anyway, Stack Overflow did this survey, and they saw how many people worked at companies with 50 or less people. And it was around half. Around half of professional developers were working at companies with 50 or less people. You're never going to hear of these companies. Are they making outrageous salaries? Yes, some of them are. What is outrageous? I don't know. Outrageous to me could mean something different to you. I think outrageous to me is when you're making, anywhere between $150,000 and $200,000, and you're an individual contributor, meaning you don't lead a team, you don't manage anybody. You are getting paid solely for the art of writing code. And I think that's pretty amazing that you're getting paid as much as doctors, lawyers, professional educators, much more than a lot of professional educators, for writing code and not having to manage people one bit. For managers and CTOs and executive level people, these numbers can skyrocket. Now, if I told somebody at Meta that I was making $150,000 or something like that as a mid-level engineer in San Francisco, and they might think, oh, that's peanuts to them, right? They might be used to making $300,000 as an individual contributor. That is not out of this world, right? That's a reasonable number you can expect as an individual contributor at certain tech companies. At Netflix, I believe you can make up to $500,000 as an individual contributor, person writing code only, right? These are notoriously difficult companies to get into. A lot of this is inflated by stock. But these are the numbers, these astronomical numbers you're talking about. So to them, taking a job at $150,000 is not a deal. So there's this other myth that, oh, well, now I'm competing with people that got booted out of Amazon or Netflix or Google. Now I got to compete with them. And I'm thinking, no, you're not. You are not competing with those people. They're going to other top high growth companies, right? They're switching between companies. People don't go from Amazon and Netflix to no-name startup making a third of what they were making. That's just not happening. What they're doing is going to other places that you've probably heard of too. They're going from Meta to Google. They're going from Google to Amazon. They're going from Amazon to a unicorn startup that just got $1 billion in investment. They're going to OpenAI. They're going to all these other places. They're not going to work for the place down the street from you. They're just not. It's not happening. Okay. So this idea that you're competing with them is false. And then there's the last narrative, which I think is probably the most dangerous one. I've been seeing this for 10 years now, right? I've been on LinkedIn for 10 years writing and just following the social media trajectory of the tech job market. It's been really interesting to see because in 2013, when I first got on LinkedIn or I just kind of got aware that it existed and hearing people's stories about how hard the job market was, or, oh man, it's impossible. So hard to get hired. No one's hiring. I wish I had never gone to this boot camp. It was all a scam. This is 2013, by the way. Now, a lot of people say, oh, well, it's so much easier back then. And I remember really well going to a boot camp program. And one of the guys in there graduated with a computer science degree. He was around 22, 23. We were in San Francisco, epicenter of tech, right? All the startups, all the cool stuff. It took him a year to get hired. He had a computer science degree and went to a coding boot camp. Took him a full year to get hired. Me, on the other hand, I got hired before the program was even over. I got hired 8 weeks into it, and I was working as a developer. Another guy in there, similar story. He was working immediately after graduating. The majority of people that went there never found work because they just quit. They went there, they learned a little bit, they kind of, half-assed it a bit and just kind of fell off the map. That's the reality. Now, did that guy finally get hired? Yeah, we're all the people that graduated and actually put in the work, we all got the result we wanted, all of us. And that was pretty encouraging. But the idea that at some point it was so easy to get a job that you could just not know anything and get hired is false. I'd actually say that time was closer to the pandemic when companies were so desperate to hire people that they were taking anybody that could do some front end stuff essentially because the web was exploding and they had to basically support tons of customers and e-commerce businesses were exploding. That was actually a golden period, a little golden ticket where you could kind of get by not knowing much and you could probably get a job offer. That period is over and it won't come back again. I hope it doesn't come back again because the only reason it came into fruition was because we were in such a dire need because of a terrible global pandemic. So let's all hope that doesn't happen again. Does that mean you need to be a superstar stellar developer to get hired? No. You need to have the same skills that you needed 10 years ago, that you needed probably 20 years ago. I can't speak to that because I wasn't writing code 20 years ago. But you need some of the same core skills. You need to be able to write code well. You need to be able to present yourself well, not be too weird. Because let's be honest, a lot of times people can't get hired. And when I meet them and I find out why they're having a hard time getting hired, it's because they're coming off weird. How can you help that? Like maybe you are a weirdo. I don't know. There's nothing wrong with that. You just need to know so that way you can approach the situation differently. So if you are a little bit weird or off and you kind of know that about yourself, practice speaking on camera. Get Loom. Do something where you're recording yourself. Go to mock interviews. Have a friend give you some actual feedback on how you're coming off. If you, look a little off on camera, try to present yourself better. These things all count. All I'm saying is that you need to do whatever you need to do to figure out what it is that's going to help you get past whatever hurdle is preventing you from getting hired. It usually boils down to one of two things, technical or behavioral. And if your technical skills are sharp and you can present those well, and you can go into an interview and speak well and present yourself as a software developer that people can trust, you're going to be fine. If you're lacking any of those two areas, it's going to take you longer. And luck is a factor. I always say that. Luck is a total factor. Not luck meaning like just apply to a million places and eventually you'll get hired. But you'll meet somebody in an interview and they could be having a good day, a bad day. They could have met a better candidate right before you. They could have had 0 candidates and you're the only one that showed up. They could have had somebody else quit the day before and they're desperate. You can hit luck in all sorts of ways. It can go in your favor or go against you. There's nothing you can do to control that. The only thing you can do is control your inputs, what you learn, how you prevent your, and what you're doing to keep up with the trends in the industry. The worst thing you can do, of course, as you probably already guessed, is to quit. Most people will choose that path. So thank you for coming to my rant. And I just want to let you know that if you're considering getting into tech, do not let these ridiculous posts online fool you. YouTube is littered with all these stupid videos about why AI is taking your job, the worst time to become a developer in 2024. If you look up trucking, if you look up lawyers, if you look up any other popular industry, truckers, for whatever reason, is a very popular one where I see a lot of this doom and gloom stuff too. If you look it up, you'll see a lot of the same things. You know why? Because that's what sells. It doesn't sell to tell people the boring reality. Yeah, getting into tech is kind of hard. It's actually really hard. You can get a really nice career making a decent amount of money. That's not interesting. You know what's cool? So-and-so got laid off, or I got $1 million as a programmer. That is interesting stuff. Anyway, don't fall for it. Don't fall for the ridiculousness online. Use your head. Go on sites like TrueUp. Go on sites like Stack Overflow. Look at the developer surveys and make an informed decision, and don't get caught up in the news hype cycle. Hope that's helpful to you, and I'll see you around. That'll do it for today's episode of the Develop Yourself podcast. If you're serious about switching careers and becoming a software developer and building complex software and want to work directly with me and my team, go to Parsity.io. And if you want more information, feel free to schedule a chat by just clicking the link in the show notes. See you next week.